Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Russell Matthews and I'm back with another Canadian benefit update for you. We've got some new information on a few different stories that we've been covering here on the channel, so this video is going to update you on all of them in sort of short little snippets, so make sure you stay all the way to the end because some of these stories may apply to you more than others. We're going to be talking about how some provincial benefits have been delayed and have taken longer than people expected, and we're also going to be talking about how the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, some of the companies who applied for this benefit, their CEOs are eligible to receive bonuses this year, and how that might be a little bit contradictory on what the benefit was intended for. And finally, we're going to talk about how a loophole that we've been finding in the CRSB that has allowed vacationers to travel, how that might be closing soon and how the application is going to change for this benefit. If you've been following the channel, you probably already know that the British Columbia government recently had an election, and one of the election promises of the person who ended up winning, John Horgan, was to disperse $1,000 to all families in the country as a sort of extra recovery benefit, and they called this the British Columbia Recovery Benefit. This was a 100% tax-free benefit given to people to help them through the financial hard times that they had been experiencing in the province. But as soon as this benefit was released a month ago, they immediately ran into some problems. First off, the website crashed almost immediately, making it very difficult for people to apply on the day of. And then there were countless reports of people who were being required to provide additional documentation to prove they're actually a BC resident or to prove some sort of other information about their application to ensure that they actually are eligible to get the benefit. Okay, that makes sense. But what doesn't make as much sense is the fact that if you were flagged as needing to provide information, this could delay your benefit up to 30 days, an entire month from the day that you tried to apply to get this much needed benefit. Recently at a press conference, John Horgan, the Premier of BC, was asked whether or not he felt like he actually delivered on his campaign promise to bring this money to Canadians, or rather BC residents, as quickly as possible, given that now it's taken almost 2 months since he was elected for any of this to actually happen, even longer.
Well, yes, I do. There's always room for improvement, but as I understand it, 1.4 million British Columbians have been approved. $645 million has already left the Treasury and is in the bank accounts of British Columbians. We heard obviously some challenges at the front end, and I was mindful of that in year-end interviews with you and others. But I came back in early January to a pile of messages from people around BC, grateful that they had applied on a Friday and on a Wednesday there was money in their bank account. That's not the story for everyone, but that's the story of the overwhelming number of British Columbians.
So the message from the Premier is essentially, yes, there have been some problems, some people aren't getting this money, but look, most of the people have gotten this money. $645 million has been dispersed, and 1.4 million BC residents have been approved and have been sent this money. So he's saying, okay, it was pretty good, we can still improve here, and sort of not really giving an answer for these people who are still waiting for their documents to be approved. Next up, there was a new report that was just released by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. And among other issues brought up, the main point that this report brought to life was that CEO bonuses should be cancelled for companies that take Canada's wage subsidy. Now, this is something that is definitely debatable, but as it stands right now, I don't think most Canadians recognize that for the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, this isn't only going to Canadian-owned businesses. Companies that are owned outside of Canada but have some employees inside of Canada are also able to apply for this benefit, which covers the vast majority of wages for these workers. And it seems that even though there's a decrease in revenue for these companies, when they apply for the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, some companies are ending up in better positions than they would have been pre-pandemic. This could result in potentially million-dollar bonuses for the heads of these companies, and this report is actually suggesting that companies who increase their bonuses for their CEOs and high-end employees won't be able to receive the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, so that essentially taxpayers aren't subsidizing these huge bonuses. Now, this sort of concern around the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy comes on top of reports that we heard just a few days ago that some airlines that are operating in other countries, including China, are receiving the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy as well. And this brings up the big question on should these companies be able to actually receive this benefit even if if they receive bailouts from their other home countries. Now, we talk about that a lot more in the video that we released just a little while ago, so if you want to check that out, there's more about just this in the description. And finally, there have been changes to the application process for the CRSB. You'll remember that's the Canada Recovery Sickness Benefit. Now, in light of hearing about all these government officials that were taking vacations over the holiday, we also heard about the potential loophole that people who have gone for vacations could go through when they came back, allowing them to receive a benefit to do their mandatory 14-day quarantine, even if their travel was not essential. Of course, this was frustrating for a lot of people who feel like they've been following the government's guidelines to a T, while at the same time some people are going against these travel advisories, going to a nice vacation in Mexico, coming back and receiving benefits for doing their mandatory quarantine. Now, there are questions about how much this is actually happening, but it seems like whether or not it is happening on a high level or a low level, the government is responding. For now, the CRSB information page has been updated with this warning. It says that if you traveled internationally, the government has announced proposed changes to the eligibility criteria that would deny you, if you traveled internationally, from claiming the CRSB, and that the changes would apply to eligibility periods starting on or after January 3rd, 2021. Now, there still needs to be amendments and changes made to the bill that brought in the CRB, the CRSB, and the CRCB in order to give the government the authority to make this change to the eligibility requirement. So it still remains to be seen if it will actually happen, but at least they're putting this update on the website saying, hey, this policy is coming down the pipeline, and it's likely that other parties in the House of Commons are going to vote it through rather quickly. So if you're applying and you're sort of doing this sort of loophole to be able to get paid to take your quarantine after you're already traveled and enjoyed your vacation, maybe you shouldn't do that. And it seems that once this legislation is actually brought through, that the federal government might use border data to find travelers who are applying for this sickness benefit, essentially combing through the list of people they've seen enter the country and sort of using that as a starting point to determine whether or not their travel was actually essential. Now, the nitty-gritty and the fine details about how this will actually be implemented remains to be seen, and we likely won't hear about it until the end of the month when the House of Commons comes back from a scheduled break that it's been on for a little while now. But if you're interested in staying up to date on any of the topics we've talked about today, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, because I'll be bringing updates just like this one all the time whenever there's information that could be valuable to you. And if you enjoyed this video, the number one thing you can do to help grow the channel and get more content like this is to click that share button and to send it to somebody who you think might also enjoy it. And with all of that said, thank you so much for watching, everybody. I really hope this video helped you out a little bit, or at least got you up to date with what's going on in the country, and I'll see you next time.